So what I wanted to start with is, first of all, introducing Vermont Student Assistance. I don't know how many of you are aware of VSAC or what we do, but VSAC was created by the legislature over 50 years ago to make sure that Vermont residents had the informational resources and financial resources to go on to college. So we do a lot of work in that particular sandbox. We are really paying attention to who's going to college, when they're going to college, where they're going to college, why they're going to college, and equally and perhaps even more important, why aren't students going to college? And what does that mean to the state of Vermont? What does that mean to the families that those students are part of? And what does that mean to that individual student? What kind of life choices are they making for themselves when they opt out of higher education? So Patrick, do you want to?
You want me to read the opening statement?
Sure, read the opening.
So we're gonna just kind of start with this little opening statement. So Vermont has one of the highest high school graduation rates, 88% in the nation, but it lags both regionally and nationally in the percentage of students who enroll in a post-secondary institution. While nationally, 68% of recent high school graduates enroll immediately, only 61% do so in Vermont. And 12% of those students drop out after the first year. So you can imagine the impact to them financially, having started and then not continued. So what we wanted to talk about is who are these students, what are the challenges they are facing, and what is being done to improve these numbers in light of the lifetime inequities they cause to individuals, the economic impact of the state, as Marilyn said, and the needs of our state's future workforce. So that's the grounding for what we want to talk about. Do you want to just introduce yourself, then I'll introduce myself?
Sure.
We're known as the brother and sister act at VSAC, by the way.
We are not related in any way, but it's hard to tell that sometimes. So, as I said, my name's Marilyn Cargill. I've been at VSAC for well over 30 years, which is like impossible because no one takes one job and stays there forever. But I have, and I have worked from in a lot of different positions, but I started out in our grant program, which is really key for us to getting low-income first-generation students into college. They need grants. Loans are not their ticket in. Scholarships aren't necessarily, because sometimes it's really hard for that particular group of students to compete, especially against students whose parents have already gone through this process. And so we have a very large grant program that is funded completely by the state of Vermont through state appropriations through tax dollars. And I started out there. I now work as a vice president in charge of all of our financial aid services as well as our research department.
So I'm Patrick. I'm another vice president over at Vermont Student Assistance. I've been there only 20 years. I'm much younger than Marilyn.
I know, it was a setup. I had to say that.
Yeah, she falls for it every time. I came to VSAC 21 years ago, largely because it was a job that I wanted. I didn't come here because I thought the mission was great and I was really passionate about kids. I've been here 21 years. I am passionate about kids and I am passionate about the VSAC mission. I oversee Career and Education Outreach, which is the group that works throughout the state, helping low-income and first-generation kids kind of find their way to the training and education they need to be successful in life. That is what I kind of am driven by now. I work in mentoring programs. I try to help build scholarships for youth, and I am also on the school board in South Burlington. I know there's some South Burlington people here. Hopefully that's okay that I'm on the school board. But that's who I am. That's who Marilyn is.
So we wanted to hear a little bit about who you are. And so I'm curious, how many people in this room went to college? Okay, just barely anybody, right? So this group is very familiar with a college-going culture. You understand how this works. You understand what your children need to do. And that's huge. That is really huge. The next thing I want to know is, and just in your own heads you can think about this, I'll tell you my story, but when did you know that you were going to go to college? When was that just part of what you knew that was going to happen? Was it in your senior year of high school? Was it something you grew up always knowing that your parents expected you to go to college? Like, when did you know that? And that is really important because the majority of Vermonters who go on to college, 79% of students say that by 6th grade, they have made that decision that they're going to college. So all the work that a lot of us are doing at the high school years to try to change that, it's already too late. In their own minds, they've already made that decision. Doesn't mean they can't go back as an adult, but what it does mean is they may not have taken the courses they needed to when they got to high school so that they could go to college. They don't have the math courses underneath them. They don't have the language courses underneath them, because by 6th grade, they've already opted out of the process. So talking to students really early about the importance of college is really important. The other thing that I find fascinating, and we do a senior survey, so I should tell you a little bit about this. Starting in 1978, VSAC began every other year surveying every single senior in the state of Vermont to say, what are your plans? Are you thinking about going to school? Are you aspiring to college? And then we follow up and say, did they do it? If they aspired to college, did they go? If they thought they were going into the military, did they do that? If they expected to step right out and work, did they find jobs? And so we do both an original survey and then we do a follow-up survey. And we've got some pretty deep longitudinal information because we've been doing it so long. So one of the questions we ask students, and I should probably say one more thing. I am the mother of 2 college grads. And if you had asked me if I had had any impact on whether or not my own, am I doing that?
Well, I wasn't moving, so.
I'm going to keep my hands out here. I don't know what I'm doing.
Don't bump your cord.
Don't touch my cords.
Don't bump the cord.
Okay.
All right, go.
I don't know if I can talk without moving my hands. I'm feeling kind of paralyzed. If you had said to me, what impact did I have about my own children going to school, I would have said, pretty little. It's only what I do for a living. I've only been doing it for 30 years, but when it came time to go to college, my kids wanted to talk to anyone except me about the process, with the exception they were happy to let me fill out their financial aid forms. That they wanted nothing to do with. What we have found, and this is fascinating, 91% of first generation, now that term means a student whose parents did not obtain any type of college degree. 91% of first generation students who go on to college, if their parents said, I want you to do that. 91% will pursue higher education if their parents say, I'd like you to do it. That is a phenomenal number. 97% of students whose parents went to college will aspire to college if their parents say, I want you to go. Those numbers are phenomenal because only 50% of students aspire without it if they're first generation. So those are big, big numbers. That's a big difference. So the first thing that we need to do is convince parents that they need to talk to their kids about going on to college. That is the most important thing that's going to happen in any household, is that parents simply talk to their kids with that expectation. Now, we're going to talk in a minute about why that's problematic sometimes, right? If you're not from college, you haven't experienced that, it can be a really hard conversation to have. It can be a scary conversation. But it is the #1 compelling reason that students make that decision. And I got to put my glasses on and see what other facts I was supposed to tell you.
And while Marilyn's looking, I'll just define a term for us. So aspire, in the way that we look at it, is a student self-reporting that they want to go. They're just talking to us in the abstract in some context, saying, I aspire to go to college. Doesn't mean they've enrolled, doesn't mean they filled out the forms, it means they are wishing to go.
When we check with students, as 9th graders, 91% of them are aspiring to go to college. By the time they're seniors, only 75% of them still hold that aspiration. So there is something that has happened in those 4 years of high school where we're losing a large percentage of our students thinking about going on to school. Patrick, go ahead.
You want to jump to the next section here?
Sure.
So So what I was going to talk about is what does it mean to be a first generation in Vermont in particular? And Marilyn touched on a little bit. It means that if you're a first generation student, that you don't have that college going mindset that sits in your home every single night when you go home. There's not an adult in your home that understands the college application process, the college search process, what an award letter looks like. There's probably an assumption that there's a lot of cost involved, and then we know that there is. There's also this emotional response from some percentage of the parents that, why would you go to college? Is this life that we have not good enough for you? Do you think you're better than me in some way? And that's a really hard thing to change, because you don't want to break up the family to make that change. So you have to be respectful of the bond and the value of that relationship while still creating a situation where the student can see other opportunities in their life, so they don't necessarily repeat the same challenges that their parents had. And that's something that we deal with in our counseling world every single day. And we have lots of parents that we know through the senior survey that Marilyn talked about that don't even have a conversation with their student about what they're going to do after high school. They may have a bad relationship with education in their own mind. They may be embarrassed about their own experiences in some ways. They are just silent. When we talk to students through that senior survey and through counseling about when was the first time an adult in some context talked to you about your future after high school, sometimes they say, nobody asked me anything until I was in 10th grade. And we know that at that point, some of the trajectory's already been set, and it's a really, really big lift to start changing things at that point. I'll share you one story that I thought was really compelling to me, and I've told it a couple of times. And one of our counselors shared this story with me when they were conducting a college visit. And so sometimes we will rent a bus, and we'll try to get as many families, students, and parents to go on a college visit with us. In this particular case, the bus was coming into UVM for a college visit, and the bus was full. We had a whole group of people that a lot of them had never been on a college campus before as a family. So you can imagine there was a lot of students there that it would be the first potential college bound like myself in their family. So the gentleman pulled the bus up, they start unloading, and the counselor says, we're going to start walking over there to where those buildings are, and then we're going to meet right in front of that blue building. And the students are walking off, they're all getting in line, they start walking, and as the counselor's leading them off the campus, one of the parents kind of pulls them aside a little bit and says, kind of sheepishly, these are beautiful buildings, but which one of them is the college? And as you're walking through the UVM campus, we all kind of internalize that as, we get kind of sarcastic, it's kind of a silly question, but the environment in which this person had grown up in, it was just so foreign to them. And that reminds me, when I think of that story, when I share that story, of kind of the privilege and the opportunities that I've had in my life, that helped me to learn, helped me to experience all the things that I've done, and that there are really good, solid, great people out there that just haven't had that opportunity. And our job in some ways at VSAC is to expose them to that, to make that available to them, to kind of help with that equity conversation that we have often.
I think the other thing we love about that story is that parent who'd never been on a college campus, his sole experience was a high school building, so he assumed a college would be a single building, had the courage to say to that outreach counselor, which building is it? Mm-hmm. He took that time to ask that question. Now, he didn't ask it loudly. He pulled the counselor aside because he didn't want to embarrass himself and he didn't want to embarrass his student. But he asked the question. A lot of parents aren't going to ask that question. And we don't even think about, when we're leading a group across a college campus, that a campus concept could be foreign to them. That's just not something that I think about. I'm first generation. I remember getting to UVM. My parents did not bring me to school. I rode down with a guy who was in my class who also went to UVM. I had a suitcase and a bag full of linens. Now I can tell you, it took me a van packed to the rafters to get my first child to college, right? I wanted to make sure he could possibly not need anything when I left. His bed was made, his room was set up, he could not wait to get me out of there. But the difference of knowing what he needed and my parents having no clue. And they were They thought it was great that I was going to college. They were very supportive. They wished me well as I was leaving, but it never entered their head to drive down with me. I already had a ride. You would no more send a child. I would no more send a child to college without going with them on that first trip. It's just a different experience. One of the things that VSAC did in 2005, so we've been around a long time, and we think we know a lot about this. This is what we do for a living. We talk about college, we talk about students going on, we try to incent first generation low-income students, we try to incent middle-income students, and we think we're pretty expert about the whole thing. And we started a project to have a group of interviewers outside of VSAC meet with first generation low-income families to interview them to say, when you think about college, what are the things you think about? And we were talking to students and we were talking to parents. And at that time, VSAC's entire presentation to inspire students to go on to higher education was expand your horizons, grow to be a different person, learn as much as you can, meet new people. It was all about growing and expansion and seeing something different. So we sent these interviewers out to talk to families, and they came back and said, everything that you are saying is scaring people to death. And we were like, well, we're sure you must have misunderstood that interview because we know what we're doing. And they said, no, you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue. And these families spoke so eloquently about their fear. Their fear was, our child will go to college and meet all kinds of new people and get a whole different view of what is an acceptable life, and they will not come home. And if they try to come home, they will not fit into our community. And that stopped us right where we stood. And we said, what is our message? What is it we're saying to people? And what is it we're saying to families? And we changed our entire message to expand your horizons to start where you are. You don't have to go anywhere. There's CCV offices all over this state. There are wonderful state colleges in a lot of these communities. What do you want to do in your own community? How can you start with where you are right now and still aspire to college? And how can your family be able to visit you and see you? One of the things that we found was when my son called me, for example, and he was homesick. And he said, Mom, I'm homesick. And I said, yeah, I bet you are. But, stick it out. Make some friends. Get that Frisbee out and go see who wants to play. That's good luck. But I didn't say come home. But first generation families frequently say, come home. Come home. This is not a good space for you. You don't fit there. Come home. So if they're already living at home and going to school, that's a perfectly acceptable way to begin college. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very acceptable financially. It helps them stay within their communities if that's what they want to do. And for those students who want to expand their horizons and go somewhere else, they can always do that. But they don't necessarily have to start there. And I think for me at least, having worked at VSAC probably 20 years or more at that point, yeah, about right. What I really learned from that was stop being so sure what you know and start listening. Start questioning. Really try to understand what people are trying to tell you instead of you telling them what they should be thinking. It was an incredible lesson for us as an organization, and it was certainly a lesson for me individually.
I think we need to wrap this up a little bit.
We have to hurry up.
I want to get right to the conclusion.
Is that you?
So what are the things, some of the things, we'll just tell you some of the things that VSAC is working on as quickly as we can to try to move this forward, and then we'll invite you to kind of engage with us in some broader things that we think the state is going to be taking on. So do you want to talk about the dual enrollment?
So if any of you are teachers, you probably are familiar with the dual enrollment program. Dual enrollment allows juniors and seniors in high school to take a college course as an exploration. The high school pays for it. There's no cost to the students. What the state legislature realized, though, was that for low-income families, without help with books, travel, or fees, low-income families still couldn't afford the free course. And so the legislature stepped into that. So there's dual enrollment to help with that. Early college pays for an entire freshman year of college if students are interested in that. And then in addition to that, there is also an Intro to College Studies that VSAC helps support that allows students to learn how to study on a college campus and how to fit into an educational environment on a college campus.
So two other things I'll share with you. VSAC for the first time is being funded by the state for a couple of small aspiration programs where we are actually working with entire communities. Lamoille, Bellows Falls, and Hazen are the first thing we've been working on, where we are actually trying to engage the entire community, the businesses, the other nonprofits, the students, the parents, the educators, that are all trying to work together. We're trying to facilitate that process and really change the culture within some of the schools to increase the college and career planning, whether that be trade school or some other thing. Whatever those students are really passionate about, let's figure out what the right path is for them, and let's get them on that trajectory so that they can be successful. And then we're also helping to facilitate the process where the state has adopted a 70 by 2025. That's 70% of its adults in the entire state will have some kind of a degree or a credential of value by the year 2025. We know, for one example, there are about 30,000 Vermonters that have some college credit but no degree at the end of that. And there's lots of other little stats that we can share with you. And that's a place where, as leaders in the state, we can all work together to try to raise that up. You could be part of the pledge to commit to that, work within your organizations and your businesses to help support that program.
Mentoring.
And then we'll talk about mentoring another day.
Well, I just want to say one thing, though, except
Okay.
that meaningful adult.
The meaningful
Everyone
adult.
in this
Fair
room
enough.
is a meaningful adult,
Fair enough.
and you have an option and an opportunity to make a voice that can be heard by students, and that's so important.
Marilyn, will you
I'll
run
stop.
for election soon?
7 times.
Let's go ahead and have dinner, and we'll come back for the other two.